Well, here we are, folks, with another episode of the Enneagram in a Movie. And I usually try to do these intros a little bit upbeat, but we're actually talking about something a little bit sad today because we're doing this a few days after the passing of Gene Hackman, who was found dead with his wife and their dog in their home. And details are just coming out as of this recording. They don't know what caused his death. It seems like they're getting a little bit closer to it. But we thought this would be a great opportunity to show appreciation for, just one of the all-time greats in cinema. One of the all-time, I think, unappreciated greats because of the type of actor he was, which we'll get into in a moment. But TJ, tell us a little bit about Gene Hackman, if you would.
Yeah, Gene Hackman, even though we don't quite know what killed him, did live to be 95.
Yes, yeah.
So,
yeah, he got his money's worth. Yeah, he got his money's worth. Yeah, and
he was a successful actor playing lead and supporting roles for a very long time, and won 2 Oscars. So he got his big break relatively late for somebody who became a really major star.
Yeah.
He didn't start playing lead roles until he was roughly 40. But the big movie that started things for him, I believe, was Bonnie and Clyde. He had a supporting role in that. Played the lead in The French Connection, which got Best Picture, and he got Best Actor. And then in the 70s, it was just one lead role after another. Many, many successful movies. He was the villain. He was Lex Luthor in the Superman franchise, which continues to be iconic and well regarded.
Yeah.
And then he won Best Supporting Actor for his role in Unforgiven in 1992. He retired formally from the screen in 2004 with a movie called Welcome to Mooseport, just a silly comedy that didn't do that great, and then retired.
Yeah.
Like, he was never a celebrity. That's one of the things about him. He was an actor, not a celebrity, even though he was a household name.
Yeah.
But you never saw him on the cover of magazines. You never heard about him having some kind of public meltdown, or dating a starlet, or going to rehab, or anything like that. For all I know, he did all of those things. He just doesn't seem to have cared to be a red carpet talk show celebrity.
Yeah. And he wasn't a movie star either. He was an actor. He was well known by, as you said, everybody kind of knew who he was, but he wasn't a Clint Eastwood or, a Robert Redford or something like that. And even though he played a lot of leading man roles, he certainly didn't have leading man looks, right? And it would be interesting to see if somebody who looked like Gene Hackman, just kind of like an average everyday guy that you would see, he could be a longshoreman, he could be a lawyer, he could be anything. And kind of nothing at the same time. It would be, it's challenging to see somebody with his face, kind of being as big a star today as he was then, right? Because I think that the expectations are a little bit different.
All right, Popeye's here.
Bill, well, I thought that you were dead.
Hell, I even thought I was dead. Till I found out it was just that I was in Nebraska.
He saved my life. 30 years ago, I was knifed in a bazaar in Calcutta. He carried me in the hospital on his back.
Who stabbed you?
He did. Ray, look at me.
Why don't you take a fucking look at this?
So you might as well pack up your bags and head your ass on back up north where you belong. Boy, go!
And you get this straight, shit kicker. Don't you go mistaking me for some whole other body.
Wait. A toast for long friendship.
Tell me true. Is she as good as she looks? She's better.
Do they know me?
Who is they?
Do they know me?
I don't know what you're talking about!
You continue upon this course and insist upon this launch without confirming this message first, I will be
Chief of the boat,
back by the rules of precedence,
Captain, Commanding Officer of the USS Alabama.
Regulations.
I order you to place the XO under arrest on the charge of
Navy regulations.
I say again, I order you to place the XO under arrest on the charge of mutiny.
Stetsbacher, when I was 6 years old, my father said to me,
Get out.
Get out. You got a stupid smile, you know that, pal. Can you see it?
We didn't ask you to fight for it, but damn it, don't fight against us! Leave us alone! How many more sacrifices? How much more blood?
If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential,
to be the best that you can be. I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners.
Anyway, so a couple of interesting things about him. Number one, he was born in 1930 and actually dropped out of high school at 16, lied about his age to join the Marines. And he was in the Marines for, I think, about 7 years or so, and then did a number of odd jobs until he moved to California and became an actor. That's not something you see that much anymore, right? Of somebody dropping out of high school and this was right after World War II. So, and probably leading up to the Korean War. So, this wasn't, something that one did on a whim. And that's just the kind of guy he was, I mean, he often played a tough guy, and was probably kind of, all the accounts I've read, he was a little bit rough in real life. I mean, he wasn't an easy to get along with kind of guy, right? He was not often, he was often very difficult on the set from what I've heard, and not friendly to people, and often very negative about roles and picking fights with characters. Famously, him and Danny Glover, who also apparently is not a likable person and not easy to work with, which surprises me based on the kind of roles he plays. But apparently, yeah, Danny Glover really it was difficult to work with. And so the two of them working together in the Royal Tenenbaums was apparently quite an issue. And it almost got to the point where they had to, replace one of them because they just couldn't get along. And that famous scene in the kitchen where Royal confronts the Danny Glover character, who's, kind of making moves on Royal's ex-wife, they had such fights during that scene that, Gene Hackman stormed out and they talked him into please giving it one more try. Right? Wes Anderson said, please, just one more try. And he said, that's it. If this, can't, make this work, I'm out of here and I'm off this movie kind of thing. And apparently they got this great take. Ornery, and I believe that the line, I hear you, Coltrane, was ad-libbed by Gene Hackman. And it wasn't ad-libbed out of, I think this will be funny or I'm being loving here, but it was kind of, intentionally offensive, towards Danny Glover, and made one of the great exchanges in all movies. I think, I just love that scene. It is the perfect dick move, right? I mean, it is just the perfect, like awful thing to say that, that is just witty and clever and profoundly offensive at the same time. So, and only if I'm the mind of somebody who's probably not a great person to begin with, maybe, So,
well, just to talk about that role a little bit, because we have talked about that in our Wes Anderson episode, but there's a couple of things that stayed with me. That character seemed pretty eight-ish. He was the patriarch of the family. He had relentlessly cheated on his wife, hadn't lived with the family for any number of years, and yet the Danny Glover character is courting her. They plan to marry, and he gets his back up because that's my wife.
Yes.
That was a really interesting thing for me, just to think of, like, where does that sense of ownership, that sense of possession come from?
Yeah.
What's going on, dude?
Are you asking me as an eight, or are you just talking about in general with the characters, right? See, the thing you got to learn about eights is it's their world, and you're just taking up space in it. I mean, I hate to say this, but all the people that are close to me know it's Mario is the center of his universe, and everybody else is just supporting characters. So it doesn't shock me at all, right? I mean,
right.
That he would just assume, look, I know we're divorced for decades, and I'm out of here, and all this stuff, but it's my wife. What are you doing here, right?
I own you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And then
you're in my house, even though I haven't lived here in 20 years, right? So.
And I'm bankrupt.
Yes.
He's been living in a hotel for who knows how long, hasn't paid his bill. They finally get rid of him. Yeah. And he fakes his way back into the family home by pretending that he has stomach cancer and he's dying.
Yeah.
The myth is eventually exploded. And as he's being booted out of the house, he just very openly tells them that this last amount of time that he's been able to spend with his family, including his grandkids, have been the best times of his life. And the voiceover comes in and says, as Royal said this, he realized it was true. And that moment just broke my heart. I thought there is the beautiful tenderness as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Hackman, so I don't think Hackman was an 8 in real life. I think he was actually a transmitting 6. And again, he was a very, I'll say he was a versatile actor, but tended to play 2 roles, either an 8 or a transmitting 6 in most of the, things I've seen. So that for me, as I've gone back and looked at different roles he's done, is he really kind of tapping into and playing the 8 here, or is it more this transmitting 6? So, for example, what was the one with Will Smith?
Enemy of the State.
Enemy of the State, the Tony Scott movie, right? Where he was, and The Conversation as well, right? The Francis Ford Coppola. Those are transmitting 6 roles. Okay. And I would even think my other top Gene Hackman performance, Unforgiven, where he plays the Sheriff Little Bill Daggett, a menacing guy. And yeah, it's interesting because I was going to say that he seemed kind of, again, transmitting 6s to me, but I'm not quite so sure. I think that one might have been pretty darn 8-ish through.
I lean more towards 8 for that. Yeah, there's a fair bit of him.
Yeah,
we talked about this as specifically almost like one of the signatures of an 8, to be threatening without raising your voice.
Yes.
Whereas a transmitting 6 is more threatening by yelling a little too loud.
Yes.
Like being aggressive in a way that's pretty clear of like, I'm terrified of you. That's why I'm attacking you. You better not mess with me. As opposed to an 8 just states a simple fact.
Yes.
Of what I'm going to do to you or what the consequences are for this.
Yeah, the most chilling line of that movie probably was when he kind of gets up close to Morgan Freeman and tells him, you better be telling me the truth, or this time I'm going to hurt you, and I'm not going to do it nice like I did before, right? I mean, it's just, it's just terrifying, and it's probably the softest thing he says throughout the movie.
And then kills him. We don't see that, but that's what happens to that character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think in Unforgiven he plays a really unhealthy 8.
Yes.
He's the sheriff in this small town.
Yeah.
He's the king.
Yes.
And as you said before, like he is the sun. Everybody else is an orbiting planet or asteroid or comet. But like it's all about me. I rule this town. This is my fiefdom.
Yeah.
And the plot of Unforgiven is that some ranch hands cut up a sex worker, and then the sex workers pool their money to lay out a reward for a gunslinger to come and get revenge. So as the sheriff, first of all, he's the one that decides that the ranch hands aren't going to be punished beyond a whipping and having to pay a ransom of some ponies.
Yeah, he's literally judge, jury, and executioner, right?
Yeah. And then when different gunslingers show up, he takes it upon himself to give them a very public beating and announce to everybody watching and listening that this is my town and this doesn't happen here, and spread the word to anybody else that can come here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do not mess with me.
Yeah.
And again, that ownership. This place is mine.
Yeah.
I rule this.
Yeah. For me, I think that, in a career of spectacular performances, for me, that's one that stands out, right? Those two. And what's interesting about that is that they're so different, right? Those two performances. There's nothing funny about Little Bill. Right. Maybe not even, I mean, you could say that he's mocking the Richard Harris character, English Bob, while he's in jail, and he's having laughs at his expense, but it's not funny. Right. But Hackman could do comedy. I mean, and I read somewhere that he said that he wanted to do comedy because it was so difficult. He wanted to challenge himself. Right. He said, serious acting's easy, but comedy is hard. Um, that's a sign of somebody who's a pretty darn good actor, right? Who can say that. But Royal Tenenbaum is just a funny movie, and also, again, one of the movies we've talked about recently is Get Shorty, where he plays. What's the character's name? The movie producer.
Zinn.
Yeah, Howard Zinn, right? Is it
Or
Howard?
Zell or something like that.
Yeah. Was it Howard or no? Howard Zinn is the
Howard Zinn's a historian.
Yeah, the historian. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Harry Zell, that's it.
Harry. Yeah, Harry. There you go. Yeah, but it's just funny, in that movie. And
Young Frankenstein as well.
Oh, right. Yeah,
he's got a one-scene cameo as a blind hermit monk.
Oh,
wow. Young Frankenstein, who welcomes the monster into his home, not being blind, not knowing he's a monster. Yeah. And it's just a lot of gag comedy based on the fact that he's blind. So when he thinks he's pouring soup into the bowl, he's pouring it onto the monster's lap. When he thinks he's lighting his cigar, he's lighting his finger, things like that. But Hackman, who this is 1974, he had recently won the Oscar for French Connection. He was Mr. Serious Actor, and here he is playing this absurd one-scene role in a crazy parody comedy and kills it. It's a movie stacked with excellent performances, and he's right in there doing it with the best of them.
Yeah. My first experience of Gene Hackman was actually going to see The Poseidon Adventure in the movie theater as a kid, right? My parents took me to see The Poseidon Adventure, which haunted me for years. It's a movie about a ship that, that was the era of the disaster movies. And so The Poseidon Adventure is about a cruise ship that gets hit by a tsunami and overturned. And they have to, make their way, through the ship as it's starting to sink and all that sort of stuff. So, or as water's flooding into it. But he was the kind of the lead, he played a minister, I think, who was, guided people to safety and so forth. But not a great movie and a pretty over-the-top performance, but it left an indelible mark because the guy just had presence, right? I mean, he had presence and charisma, and whenever Gene Hackman is on the screen, you notice Gene Hackman, right? He was one of those people who kind of stole every scene he was in. It seemed. I mean, even up against people like Morgan Freeman and Clint Eastwood, and, so many other amazing actors and movie stars. Warren Beatty and these people. You couldn't take your eyes off.
Bonnie and Clyde are incredible.
Yeah,
but one movie that again a stacked cast. I just saw this for the first time maybe a year ago. The Firm, 1992.
Yeah,
legal thriller.
Yeah, Tom Cruise.
Directed by Sidney Pollack, starring Tom Cruise. So Tom Cruise is Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
It's one of his great roles where he's Tom Cruise does this.
Yes.
And Gene Hackman plays a pretty minor role.
Yeah.
So he's one of the lawyers at the firm that Tom Cruise gets recruited to work at. And I just had this sense every time he was on screen of we're in good hands.
Yeah.
He does very little. There's no scenery chewing in that movie. He just has such presence that he doesn't have to do anything.
Right.
He just radiates.
Right.
And you can't take your eyes off him.
Yeah, and even Hoosiers is that way too, right? Hoosiers is not an over-the-top kind of, performance that we, might see from him, or even a kind of a big bombastic sort of performance like, Enemy of the State, for example. But he just holds the screen so well. One of my other favorite Hackman roles that I want to talk about was from the movie Heist, the David Mamet written and directed movie where he plays a thief. And have you seen The Heist by any chance, or Heist?
No.
Danny DeVito, so he's reunited, or actually this was before Get Shorty, I think. But, David Mamet, who wrote the screenplay, had a very distinct writing style, a style of writing dialogue, right? It's very mannered in a way, but also very gritty and, very real. So he has this way of writing unnatural speech that sounds natural, and it worked incredibly well for Hackman, right? I mean, Hackman just really mastered it. And again, a movie where there is no comedy whatsoever, right? And it's just, there's nothing funny here, nothing to laugh about, and and again, a lot of people in it who are quite strong. So Delroy Lindo, again, who was also in Get Shorty. Danny DeVito plays plays the scary gangster boss, which is an interesting take on things, so he's the one everybody's afraid of. And let's see, Sam Rockwell is in it, plays an excellent role, and Rebecca Pidgeon, who was in almost all of David Mamet's movies of the era because they were either married or together or something. But Heist is a really, really strong kind of caper movie that breaks down the expectations. And again, it has that sort of paranoia. The main character, and I forget his name, but his paranoia and suspicion is kind of his superpower, right? And there's this wonderful exchange, and there's a number of wonderful exchanges in the movie because the dialogue is just so darn good. But where somebody says to him, you're a really smart guy, aren't you? And he goes, nah, I'm not that smart, and he goes, well, how do you figure all this stuff out? And he says, I just imagine a really smart person and then do what they would do, and I'm just thinking, well, man, that's just so good, right? And he says it with just, in such a, there's nothing funny about it, right? It's just, that's what I do. And so I highly encourage people, particularly if you've ever seen a David Mamet movie that you've liked, and there are a bunch of them that I have liked.
And plays.
And plays, yes, and some of them are based on plays, like Glengarry Glen Ross, right? So, yeah. So, check out.
Aaron Sorkin, by the way, said almost the identical thing about his process writing. He doesn't consider himself a smart person. He writes characters who are smart. And then kind of imagines what they would say in that situation.
Oh, that's
but he takes none of the credit for the intelligence of his character.
That's funny. That's fine. There's also a great line from Danny DeVito in the movie. It's one of my favorite lines ever, right? Where he's trying to get the Gene Hackman character to do one more job, and he says, "You're going to do it for the money." And Hackman says, I don't need the money. And he says, everybody wants money. That's why they call it money. And it's just, and it's just wonderful. It's just such a wonderful line, and just delivered so well. And I still say that to people sometimes. I've been carrying that around for 20 years, or more. So a lot of great stuff in that film. All right. So Gene Hackman's going to be missed, right? I mean, he's been gone for a while, right? I mean, he retired, 20 plus years ago. He started writing books. I've never read any of his books. I don't know if they're any good or, whether they've been, well regarded or anything like that. But it does feel like the passing of an era almost, right? I mean, when you start to look at those people, I mean, Clint Eastwood is about the same age, still ticking, apparently. People like Robert Redford are, getting way up there. Warren Beatty, the movie stars of the 70s, they're starting to pass on. So it's kind of a sad time. But anyway, fortunately, it was all recorded so we can see it. Anything else on Gene Hackman that we haven't talked about?
Well, just a question.
Yeah.
What is your sense of him as a person? You mentioned that you guess he's probably a transmitting six. Curious where that guess comes from, because, like we said, didn't have that much of a public persona.
Yeah. I've heard lots of stories about him being really, really difficult, right? Really, really negative on movies and movie sets. Like I forget what movie it was, but Hoosiers. He famously was just like ranting and raving all through the making of Hoosiers about what an awful movie it was. And, none of us are ever going to work again. And, all these sort of things. He was really in a crisis because he thought it was going to be such a major flop and would ruin his career. Because it was at a time in his career where he was, being relegated more toward, supporting roles. And he was really afraid that it was going to be a catastrophe. So I've heard stories like that over and over again. And it just doesn't seem eight-ish. It seems more transmitting six, catastrophizing, aggressive, catastrophizing, and being combative with people and all of that. just
how might an 8 show up in that exact situation? Who was similarly stressed for the same reasons.
Well, see, the thing is, most 8s wouldn't get similarly stressed, in that
Right.
situation, right? It would be a different kind of response of, there might be, some kind of bossing people around and, name calling and that sort of thing, but there wouldn't be that same sort of insecurity very often. It's just, yeah, look, everybody feels stress and tension and fear at points in their lives, but you don't see a lot of it in 8s, right? I mean, they're just, they contain it well when they feel it. They compartmentalize. I think this is one of the gifts of the 8 is an ability to compartmentalize things. And if I'm feeling anxiety about it, I'm just going to put it over here and it's not going to be a thing for a while, and then it'll go away because I'm going to take action to fix it, right? Eights have a tendency to, instead of complaining about how bad things are, take over and say, here's how we're going to fix this. Right. So I think that's what you might more likely see. Right. No real
Right.
examples.
So it might be more like the general on the field.
Exactly right. Exactly
like,
right.
My career is going down the tubes and this is what's going to turn it right. Yeah. And everybody's going to get on board because I'm not standing by and making mediocre
That's
movie.
right. I'm not going to let you people screw this up, kind
right.
of thing.
Including the director.
Yeah. Right. Right. So, yeah. So, and again, I don't want to imply that 8s never have any anxiety, but not
it just shows up differently.
Yeah. 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 So, go ahead.
One last thing to say about him, which is an interesting counterpoint to the stories you mentioned. When we did our episode on Clint Eastwood, I had Skyped with a friend who played a small role in Unforgiven. She was one of the girls at Greeley's. Her name is Beverly Elliott. She's a Vancouver actor. The movie was filmed in Canada, so I had some Canadians in minor roles. When Gene Hackman died, she did a Facebook post about her memories of him on the set and of how, first of all, he nailed every take.
Yeah.
Every single take he did with full commitment, and the actor would stand around and watch, and he described it as being a masterclass. In between setups, he was either playing cards or sketching. And he sketched basically all the cast and all the crew. And he sketched her, my friend Beverly, and gave the page to her at the end.
Yeah.
So there's another side. It's like, I can see that being a 6. This just kind of every person of like, here we all are in this thing together. And I had heard that he was reluctant to take the role on Unforgiven, turned it down initially, met up with Eastwood, got to understand, oh no, this isn't a movie glorifying violence. This is a movie critiquing violence.
Yes. Yeah.
As well as he was kind of surprised by Eastwood's laconic directing style. And then got into it, and Eastwood being the master that he is, I can imagine if Hackman really was a transmitting 6, just that shift you can sometimes see in 6s when they just realize, I trust this person.
Yes. I'm safe.
I'm in good hands.
Yes.
Yeah. No need to complain. No need to get belligerent. No need to be anxious.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm part of this. I can exercise my craft. I can be with my fellow cast members.
Yeah.
And with the crew. I can play cards. I can sketch. I can have fun. I can wait.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to imply that Gene Hackman was a bad person or anything like that, right? I mean, I'm sure there are lots of wonderful stories, and and I did read, that late in his life, that him and his wife moved to Santa Fe, and everybody just saw him. He was, he didn't put on airs. He was just a regular guy, and he was just Gene, and so he did not. He was not someone who seemed to feel superior to other people and looked down on other people. He really did, his kind of movie persona is almost like as an everyman in extraordinary circumstances very often, right? Kind of like that, John McClane in Die Hard, and then, Hackman, again, he's you see him on the screen and you look at him and you're thinking, yeah, I could see him sitting at the end of the bar, right? Having a Boilermaker and, just a regular guy. So I'm sure there were a lot of wonderful things about him, and I don't want to give the impression that he was, a bad person or anything. But there are lots of stories about him being difficult at times when he felt like something wasn't working.
And it's interesting to hear that about some of those movies, particularly the Royal Tenenbaums, because his performance is pristine. And I guess I haven't seen everything he ever did, but I don't think I've ever been less than impressed by him. He always delivered.
Yeah. He never, there are some actors that sometimes you can see, they're phoning this one in. And not him. It was going to be a performance, and it was going to be a good performance. It was going to be a believable performance. I mean, everything he did, even Lex Luthor, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I buy this, right.
Totally. He wasn't cartoonish.
Right. All right. So, Gene Hackman, you had a great life. Thank you for all the years of entertainment, but quality entertainment, and really setting a standard for what can be done in movies. So he will be missed. All right, TJ. Until next time.
See you then.